20 old kitchen features that no longer exist. Kitchens today may look sleek, but they've lost the charm and practicality of the past. From linoleum floors to built-in flour sifters, we'll explore the features that made kitchens the heart of the home. Stay until the end to uncover the one feature everyone wishes would make a comeback: linoleum flooring. Before kitchens were swallowed up by sleek, soulless tiles and lifeless shades of gray, there was linoleum flooring. And let me tell you, those floors had character. Bold, checkered patterns, colorful geometrics, and sometimes even a floral or two, linoleum brought kitchens to life. Sure, it wasn't perfect. After a few years, it might bubble up in a corner or wear down where Dad stood to pour his coffee every morning. But that's what made it feel real. Every scratch and scuff told a story, unlike today's perfect floors that look like they belong in a museum. Now everything has to be stone or ceramic, cold, sterile, and soulless. Oh, it's durable, they say, but who wants to stand barefoot on ice-cold marble first thing in the morning? Linoleum, on the other hand, was warm and forgiving. Drop a plate? It might survive. Drop one today. Hope you didn't like that dish set. Linoleum wasn't trying to impress anyone. It wasn't luxurious, but it was honest. It brought color to a room that was meant for family, for food, and for life. Modern floors are pretty, sure, but linoleum had something they don't. Personality? Icebox. Before refrigerators turned into glorified computers with screens and useless features, every home had an icebox. And no, it wasn't a figure of speech, it was an actual wooden box with a compartment for a big block of ice. Once a week, the Iceman would show up with a fresh block of ice. He'd load it in, and just like that, the milk stayed cold, the butter stayed solid, and nobody had to worry about smart sensors beeping at them. It was simple, and it did its job. Sure, there were drawbacks. The ice melted and someone had to drain the water pan, but nobody complained. It was just part of life. Back then, you paid attention to the little things because nothing happened automatically. These days, refrigerators can connect to Wi-Fi and send you reminders to buy eggs. Really? How hard is it to open the door and use your eyes? The icebox didn't need apps or notifications. It needed ice, a little effort, and a weekly visit from the Iceman, who, by the way, was more reliable than most modern appliances. Refrigerators today might be convenient, but they'll never have the charm of an icebox. It was simple, sturdy, and dependable, qualities that seem to have melted away with the ice. Formica countertops. Back when kitchens were meant to be fun and functional, you could always count on Formica countertops. Turquoise, pink, mustard yellow. Formica wasn't afraid of a little color. It was shiny, cheerful, and best of all, it could take a beating. Hot pans? No problem. Spills? Wipe it clean. Formica was designed for real families who actually used their kitchens. Compare that to today's fancy granite or quartz counters that cost a small fortune and can't handle so much as a water ring without someone panicking. Heaven forbid you drop a knife and leave a scratch. Here's the thing about Formica. It wasn't trying to pretend it was something else. It wasn't masquerading as marble or stone. It was proud of what it was: affordable, reliable, and full of personality. Today's kitchens may look sleek, but they feel like they're trying too hard. Back then, nobody cared if the counter matched the backsplash perfectly. What mattered was that it worked. Formica countertops weren't just practical, they were a little slice of joy. You could roll out dough, set a hot pie down, and not worry about ruining the luxury. It was the kind of countertop where life happened, and that's something modern kitchens just don't have. They can keep their expensive stone. Give me a cheerful, sturdy Formica counter any day. Something built for living, not just for show. Electric coil stoves. There was a time when cooking didn't require a touchscreen, Wi-Fi, or an instruction manual. Enter the electric coil stove, the reliable workhorse of the mid-20th century kitchen. It wasn't glamorous, but it got the job done. You turned the knob, the coil turned red hot, and you were ready to cook. No preheating timers, no blinking displays, just you, the heat, and a little know-how. Sure, the coils were a pain to clean, and they didn't exactly scream modern design, but they were dependable. Drop a pot on one of today's glass-top stoves, and you're looking at a repair bill. Drop a pot on an electric coil. It might dent the pan, but the stove wouldn't even flinch. These days, stoves are all about looking sleek, but they don't have half the grit. Electric coils could handle it all. Sizzling skillets, boiling soup, even the occasional spill. Cleaning wasn't fun, but at least you didn't have to treat them like delicate artifacts. They weren't perfect, but there was a beauty in their simplicity and resilience. Today's smart stoves beep and flash, but can they handle a grandma's cast iron skillet? I think not. Milk door. Ah, the milk door. A tiny forgotten gem built right into the kitchen wall. This little door connected your kitchen to the outside world, and it was where the milkman delivered fresh bottles every morning. You didn't even have to leave the house. Open the door, grab the milk, and you were good to go. It wasn't just convenient, it was personal. The milkman knew your name, your family's needs, and probably even your dog's favorite hiding spot. Compare that to today, where everything is self-checkout and faceless transactions. The milk door wasn't just a feature, it was part of a system that worked. Bottles were reusable, deliveries were regular, and there was no plastic waste piling up in landfills. It wasn't fancy, but it was sustainable and practical, long before those words became marketing buzzwords. Modern homes don't have milk doors, and honestly, they're worse for it. The milk door was a little symbol of community and trust, something that's hard to find in today's fast-paced, impersonal world. Central vacuum systems. If you've never used a central vacuum system, you missed out on one of the smartest features a home could have. Instead of lugging a heavy vacuum cleaner from room to room, you'd just plug a hose into a wall port and the crumbs, dirt, and dust disappeared like magic. It felt futuristic, didn't it? No cords, no bulky machines to trip over, just the satisfying whoosh of the vacuum. It wasn't loud or flashy, but it worked, and it worked well. Modern homes might brag about their robot vacuums, but those little gadgets can't compare to the efficiency of a central vacuum system. And let's talk durability. Central vacuums could last decades with minimal maintenance. Compare that to the cheap plastic vacuums of today that break down every couple of years. Progress? I don't think so. Sure, central vacuum systems aren't as common anymore, but they were a reminder of a time when homes were built with thoughtful, lasting features. These days, everything is about convenience. But let's face it, those robot vacuums spend more time stuck under furniture than cleaning your floors. Butler's pantry. If you've ever seen a butler's pantry, you know it wasn't just a room. It was a masterpiece of organization. Tucked between the kitchen and the dining room, this little space was like a backstage area for hosting. The fine china, stored neatly. The silverware, polished and ready. Everything had its place, and chaos stayed hidden behind closed doors. These days, we've traded thoughtful design for open concept, where every mess is on full display. Guests come over, and suddenly your unwashed dishes are part of the decor. But back then, the butler's pantry solved that problem. It was the perfect middle ground, functionality without the clutter. You didn't need a huge walk-in pantry or an oversized kitchen island. You needed a simple, efficient space. It wasn't about showing off, it was about making life easier. And guess what? It worked. Modern kitchens try to replicate this with massive storage solutions, but they'll never capture the charm or practicality of a true butler's pantry. It was a small, quiet corner of the house that reminded us organization doesn't have to be complicated. Dumbwaiters. Let's talk about the dumbwaiter, one of the cleverest little inventions ever put into a home. Imagine a small elevator tucked into the wall, ready to carry food, dishes, or even laundry between floors. It was like having an extra pair of hands, except it never complained or asked for a raise. Back then, houses weren't just built for appearances, they were designed to make life easier and more efficient. If you lived in a multi-story home, the dumbwaiter was a lifesaver. It saved time, effort, and probably a few sore backs. Of course, dumbwaiters have gone the way of the dodo. Today, we're stuck lugging trays up and down stairs like it's the 1800s. Sure, we have robot vacuums and smart appliances, but they can't carry your groceries upstairs, can they? The dumbwaiter wasn't just practical, it was fun. Kids loved it, parents relied on it, and the whole family benefited. It's a shame it's been replaced by flashy gadgets that don't hold a candle to this low-tech genius. Wall-mounted can openers. There's something incredibly satisfying about a tool that just works, and the wall-mounted can opener was exactly that. Fixed to the wall or under a cabinet, it was always in the same place. No digging through drawers, no hunting for a handheld opener that mysteriously disappeared. All it took was a quick twist, and your can of soup or veggies was ready to go. It didn't require batteries, didn't take up counter space, and certainly didn't break after a year. Unlike today's electric can openers, which are bulky, noisy, and sometimes stop halfway through the job, the wall-mounted version was simple, sturdy, and reliable. But as kitchens became more about aesthetics than practicality, these little marvels disappeared. They were deemed outdated, as if convenience ever goes out of style. Instead, we now have gadgets that claim to make life easier, but end up doing the opposite. The wall-mounted can opener reminds us of a time when tools were built to serve a purpose. No frills, no nonsense. It's a small detail, sure, but it's one that represents the kind of thoughtful design modern kitchens could use a lot more of. Pull-down ironing boards. Back in the day, kitchens weren't just for cooking, they were multifunctional spaces, and one feature that proved this was the pull-down ironing board. Built right into the wall or hidden in a cabinet, it was always there when you needed it and completely out of sight when you didn't. Need to press a shirt before work? No problem. Tablecloth looking wrinkled before a dinner party? Easy fix. The pull-down ironing board was practical, convenient, and didn't require you to wrestle with a clunky contraption that took up half a closet. Today, ironing boards are an afterthought, if people even use them at all. Modern life has made us trade small, thoughtful features like this for convenience. But let's be real, dragging out a standalone ironing board is anything but convenient. And don't get me started on those ironing mats that never work quite right. The pull-down board wasn't flashy, but it was a reminder that homes were once built with real needs in mind. These days, everything is about appearances, but a pull-down ironing board, that was practical elegance, and we could all use a little more of that. Built-in flour sifters. If you've ever baked from scratch, you know the importance of sifting flour. Before baking became a weekend hobby for Instagram, it was an everyday task, and kitchens back then had the perfect tool for it, the built-in flour sifter. Mounted right into the cabinetry, these nifty sifters made baking easier, faster, and a whole lot cleaner. You'd pour your flour in, turn the crank, and perfectly sifted flour would fall into your bowl, ready for cookies, cakes, or biscuits. No mess, no fuss, and no flimsy handheld sifters spilling flour all over the counter. Nowadays, kitchens are more about shiny countertops than functional design. Hand sifters are a pain, and electric sifters, a solution to a problem no one asked for. Back then, baking was about utility, not gadgetry, and the built-in flour sifter embodied that. It might seem small, but it represents a time when kitchens were designed to make life easier and more efficient. A built-in flour sifter wasn't just a feature, it was a symbol of a home built for people who actually used it. Meat safes. Before refrigerators became the kings of the kitchen, families relied on meat safes to keep their food fresh. These sturdy wooden cabinets, often with ventilated mesh or perforated tin panels, were designed to let air circulate while keeping bugs and critters out. It wasn't high-tech, but it worked. Meat safes were placed in cool parts of the house, shaded porches, cellars, or even breezy kitchen corners. They weren't just for meat either. You could store pies, cheeses, or anything else that needed a little protection from the elements. Today, we've traded the practicality of meat safes for refrigerators that beep, buzz, and occasionally lock you out because of smart technology glitches. But here's the thing, meat safes didn't need electricity. They didn't need Wi-Fi. They were simple, reliable, and built to last. Qualities you'd be hard-pressed to find in a modern appliance. Sure, meat safes might seem outdated, but they remind us of a time when people understood how to work with nature, not against it. And let's face it, a wooden cabinet with charm and history beats a cold, overcomplicated fridge any day. Retractable dish racks. Remember when kitchens were all about functionality? One of the smartest little features from back in the day was the retractable dish rack. Hidden in a cabinet or under the sink, it would slide out when you needed it and disappear when you didn't. No bulky rack cluttering your counter, no soaking wet messes, just a clean, tidy solution. These dish racks were practical genius. You could wash your dishes, set them to dry, and then tuck everything neatly away. Compare that to today's modern kitchens, where oversized drying racks sit out like permanent fixtures. Or worse, people who refuse to own a dish rack and leave everything to drip on a towel. Charming. Some might call the retractable dish rack old-fashioned, but it was built for real life, not for show. Today's kitchens are all about sleek surfaces and open shelving, but they lack the thoughtfulness of features like this. Back then, kitchens didn't try to be trendy, they just worked. Metal bread boxes. There was a time when every kitchen had a metal bread box, and honestly, we were better for it. Sitting proudly on the countertop, it kept bread fresh without needing preservatives or plastic bags. It wasn't complicated, but it worked. Bread boxes came in all kinds of styles: simple aluminum, cheerful pastels, or even patterns with little flowers or loaves painted on the side. They weren't just practical, they added a bit of charm to the kitchen. And unlike tossing bread in the fridge, which dries it out in a heartbeat, the bread box kept things soft and ready for sandwiches, toast, or grandma's famous French toast. Today, bread is an afterthought shoved into pantries or left in its plastic bag on the counter. But the bread box wasn't just a place to store food. It was a reminder of a time when kitchens were designed for real families, not Instagram aesthetics. Chimneys, or iron stoves in kitchens. Before central heating and electric stovetops took over, kitchens were heated by iron stoves or even small chimneys. These weren't just cooking appliances, they were the heart of the home, providing warmth and filling the kitchen with the smell of slow-cooked meals. Cooking on a wood-burning stove wasn't as simple as turning a knob. You had to stoke the fire, adjust the wood, and pay attention to the heat. But that was the beauty of it. It brought a certain rhythm to the day that modern kitchens just don't have. Meals cooked on these stoves had a flavor that you can't replicate with induction or gas burners. Today, kitchens are sleek and cold, with appliances that do everything for you. But back then, the stove wasn't just functional, it was alive. It crackled, it glowed, and it made the kitchen feel like the true center of the home. Iron stoves may be a thing of the past, but they remind us of a time when kitchens weren't about convenience, they were about connection. Vintage pot hooks. Before kitchens became museums where everything had to be hidden behind sleek cabinets, we had pot hooks. These simple, practical additions allowed you to hang your pots and pans on the wall or from the ceiling, right where you could see them. And why not? Those trusty cast iron skillets and copper pots were tools of the trade, not something to be ashamed of. Pot hooks weren't just about convenience. They made the kitchen feel alive. Each pan hanging there told a story of family dinners, late-night snacks, and recipes passed down through generations. Today's kitchens. Everything's locked away in pristine, color-matched cabinets, as if we're all too scared to admit we actually cook. Sure, some might call pot hooks clutter, but they were a sign of a working kitchen. Modern life may prefer minimalism, but there's something comforting about a kitchen where everything is within reach, ready to create something delicious. Tile countertops. Before the days of quartz and marble countertops that cost as much as a used car, kitchens proudly sported tile countertops. Small, colorful tiles lined with grout were the go-to option for decades. They weren't fancy, but they got the job done, and they added a little personality to the kitchen. Tiles had their quirks. The grout wasn't always easy to clean, and you had to be careful not to crack a tile with a heavy pot. But they were durable, affordable, and gave kitchens a warm, lived-in feel. Each kitchen had its own charm, whether it was simple white tiles or colorful patterns that reflected the owner's personality. Now, everything's smooth, polished, and let's be honest, soulless. Modern countertops are all about appearances, but tile countertops were about functionality and creativity. Sure, they weren't perfect, but they had heart, and that's something no slab of granite will ever have. Kitchens with built-in radios. There's something magical about the idea of a built-in kitchen radio. Back in the mid-20th century, these little gadgets were tucked under cabinets or mounted on the wall, bringing music, news, and talk shows into the heart of the home. Imagine cooking dinner with your favorite song playing in the background or listening to the morning news while sipping coffee. The built-in radio wasn't just a luxury, it was part of the daily rhythm of life. It added a sense of connection and warmth to the kitchen, something modern gadgets can't quite replicate. Today, kitchens are full of Bluetooth speakers and smart assistants, but let's be honest, they don't have the same charm. Built-in radios were simple, reliable, and always there when you needed them. They didn't demand software updates or accidentally start playing ads in the middle of dinner. The built-in kitchen radio was a small detail, but it made a big difference. It reminded us that kitchens weren't just for cooking, they were places where life happened. Pie safes. Before Tupperware and airtight containers took over, kitchens relied on pie safes to protect baked goods and other perishables. These wooden cabinets, often with tin panels punched with decorative designs, were the unsung heroes of the kitchen. They kept flies, dust, and curious little hands away from freshly baked pies, breads, and cheeses. A pie safe wasn't just storage, it was a statement. It said, yes, we bake here, and no, you can't have a slice until it's cooled down. These charming pieces of furniture were both practical and beautiful, adding a touch of personality to every kitchen. Today, the closest thing we have is a plastic container shoved in a pantry. Romantic, isn't it? And back then, People didn't need fancy gadgets to keep food fresh. They worked with what they had, and the pie safe was a perfect example of clever, low-tech design. It didn't need electricity or a label maker to keep things organized. It just worked. Sure, pie safes have been relegated to antique shops and vintage collectors now, but they remind us of a time when kitchens were about making things from scratch, not unboxing them from a delivery app. And let's be honest, doesn't the idea of a pie cooling in a beautifully crafted cabinet sound a lot better than a plastic-wrapped pastry from the store? Manual egg beaters. Before the days of stand mixers with 10 speeds and attachments you'll never use, there was the manual egg beater. Simple, hand-cranked, and dependable, it was a staple in every kitchen drawer. Whether you were whipping up eggs for breakfast or mixing batter for a cake, the egg beater got the job done, and it gave your arms a bit of a workout too. Using a manual egg beater wasn't complicated. You grabbed the handle, cranked the gears, and watched as the beater spun effortlessly through the mix. No plugs, no buttons, and definitely no waiting for an overpriced motor to start working. And let's not forget the satisfaction of feeling the gears turn smoothly with every crank. Today's electric mixers might seem convenient, but they come with cords, bulky designs, and a manual that takes longer to read than your recipe. Plus, good luck finding counter space for one of those beasts. Back then, the egg beater fit neatly into a drawer and never let you down. It's funny how we've traded something so simple and effective for gadgets that overcomplicate even the smallest tasks. The manual egg beater might seem quaint now, but it's a reminder of a time when kitchens didn't need bells and whistles to get the job done. Sure, it took a little more effort, but that was part of the charm. And let's face it, whisking eggs by hand with a manual beater just felt right.